People say it's not only at the high end where we find a technology gap in the U.S., but in fact our research has demonstrably proven there's a significant lack of adoption of HPC technologies among small to medium-sized manufacturers and other small business. The U.S. Council on Competitiveness refers to this problem as the missing middle, and some loose multi-vendor organizations, such as the Alliance for High-Performance Digital Manufacturing, seek to enable new adoption of HPC technologies, especially throughout the supply chain of large manufacturers. Thomas, what's the magnitude of this problem in the U.S., and what, if anything, needs to be done to address it?
Oh, it's enormous. Currently, high-performance computing is a boutique industry. With essentially all of the value in the industry in the heads of the practitioners. It is a long, arduous apprenticeship to be able to get the best out of the machines that we're presenting. And yet HPC is really the third pillar both of science and technology, and both of which drive industry. And so we have to resolve this problem. Most computing techniques in education are not about performance. They are about productivity, maintenance, productivity, but they're not about, we are about performance. Performance-oriented parallel computing training is essential, and the HPC modality for essentially all industry is critical. Right now, industry is not taking anywhere near adequate advantage of how HPC can revolutionize their productivity, their throughput, and the quality of their results. So this is the problem to be solved now, and there has to be a close tie between industry, academia, and government, and we are failing in that challenge.
Michael, your thoughts?
Well, it really is all about competitiveness. So in the academic world and the science world, they're pretty much self-motivated. They want to generate their new results as fast as they possibly can, and so they're going to do that in the best way they can. In industry, they need to have a competitive advantage. They need to prove that using the high-performance computing is going to give them a competitive advantage. And as soon as someone in their industry demonstrates that, the rest of them are going to follow suit pretty quickly. So Thomas was talking about training. I think we need to, if we really want to get into the HPC, the missing middle, you need to focus on a particular target in each area, and then get one person to convert, and then everyone else will fall like dominoes.
Peter?
I think it's education, education, and education. It's making it accessible to people. And so much of it has already been said. How do you do it? I think the people who are doing it are people like Dr. Happy Sithole with CHPC in South Africa, and outreach to local community for economic development. Rocky Mountain supercomputing centers in Montana doing the same sort of thing. And I think it's HPC cloud. True HPC class systems, HPC as a service, software as a service, make it accessible, make it easy, so that the businesses can understand they can gain competitive advantage and realize they can use it.
Jay?
I agree with everything that's been said, and one thing that I want to add is that the advent of multi-core meant that you could no longer avoid buying a parallel computing system at some scale. And that's a tremendous pressure on ISVs, who had generally waited for the workstation processor performance to increase, and that would carry their application forward. Now, with every system right down to netbooks being multi-core, every ISV is going to know that they're competing against other ISVs on multi-core systems, so they have to invest in parallel computing training and for their workforce. We're seeing a great interest in this from companies that are approaching us about being industrial affiliates of the center, and in particular they're interested in our training classes and in hiring trained graduates that have taken our classes.
I think it's one thing to say that ISVs have to respond and have to invest. Has anyone talked to them about what the business model is for them to go do this? Already we're hearing software cost is the #1 barrier for people adopting HPC. I haven't heard anyone say they feel like they ought to be paying more for software. Anyone have an idea?
Well, I don't think anyone wants to pay more for anything, right? Their businesses, they're for profit, they're trying to maximize their profits. But the reality is, if their competitors are optimizing for multi-core and optimizing for parallel computing systems, they're going to have to do the same as well to be competitive. And it is easier for companies to deploy these systems now. So I think it absolutely has to happen for competitive pressure. It should happen quicker, and training is needed there.
I think for these companies to stay in business as software companies, they've got to address the multi-core issue. Otherwise, they'll lose out. But then, if they can address the missing middle, if they can reach out to the smaller companies, there's a lot of them out there, and if they get competitive advantage, they will pay for standard software, as long as they understand the business benefit.
Michael?
I'm just going to agree with these guys on that point.
Thomas?
In the very short term, a bridging action or a combination of domain-specific languages and frameworks, but these are merely means by which people can provide short-term results in order to make progress. These are not long-term. What we require are paradigms that allow us to take advantage of all of these systems where industry confidence can grow rather than shrink, where the end result of the computation can be applied to the end discipline, not to make the computers the end result themselves.
For our third topic today, gentlemen, we talk a lot about computation. It is supercomputing, of course. There's a lot of discussions around processors, accelerators, memory management. But I want to talk about HPC data management, and specifically the evolution of the parallel file system technologies, which have a lot to do with actual productivity of many of these systems. Now, IBM GPFS is sort of a given on that roadmap, but Luster's roadmap is fairly convoluted thanks to the Oracle Sun acquisition and the statement that Oracle will continue to support Luster on Oracle hardware, which in itself is a phrase that didn't exist this time last year. And PNFS has been a little bit late, although we are seeing some development with it now. Blue Arc was demonstrating it in their booth. Peter, how important are parallel file systems going to be, and what do you think this landscape is going to look like in a few years?
How important is information? I don't think anybody's got a good solution yet. I think that everybody's wrestling with data locality, data movement. I don't think any of the systems out there that I hear people saying are adequate yet. There are good ones. I think GPFS is doing well. Luster, I think the problem there is that the Luster people are running around with a big scarlet O on their chest.
Now, when you say the Luster people, do you mean people who are at Oracle or people in OpenSFS or WAM Cloud? Whom do you mean? Who are the Luster people?
I think that the users desperately want to see Luster get back into the mainstream to be trusted for the future, but at the moment it's tainted, and people are very scared about where that development is going to go. Therefore, it's a risky investment, but I think the community wants it to move forwards. But I would say that its Oracle is putting so much uncertainty there that that's a big challenge.
Jay, TAC has some skin in the game here. What are your thoughts?
Well, we've been primarily a Luster shop, and so of course the Sun acquisition concerned us because we wanted to see a strong roadmap going forward. While there's uncertainty in the short term, I'm actually impressed by this supercomputing meeting with the information we're getting from the people who are stepping in to fill that void. So WAM Cloud looks promising, Xyratech looks very promising, OpenSFS is an interesting initiative as well. So
I believe Peter Brahm is at Xyratech now,
yeah,
interesting development.
Yeah, and a couple of my staff went to their thing last night and were quite impressed with the plans they laid for the future. So while there was some very short-term uncertainty, it's actually interesting at how many credible efforts are popping up that I think are going to really support Luster going forward. Now, that being said, do I think Luster is the long-term file system? Well, anyone who runs any parallel file system currently knows they require lots of care and feeding. And they become, for TAC, we've noticed that that's probably been our greatest source of interrupts and our greatest source of system administrator effort. So we definitely need to see improved reliability and scalability in parallel file systems. And I'm not really sure where the long-term research funding for that area is coming from.
Thomas?
Data-intensive computing is critical to much of science and technology. Some in the field believe it is the critical problem at the moment, with enormous applications such as simulation of the large fusion reactor and, of course, the output from the Large Hadron Collider as just two examples, not to mention the entire Earth observing system for meteorology and other characteristics. We have not even mentioned the technology disruption that's occurring with non-volatile RAMs that will create yet another layer in the system. GPFS is a solid system, but it's expensive and not always accessible to the random. Panelists is handling the middle, conventionally, the mass market. PNFS I still consider to be an unknown, and Luster has been a disappointment compared to what its goals were initially. I would say this is an enormous challenge to the community, and given that we're basing it still on a technology that's 60 years old in its at its inchoate, I don't know where this is going to go.
Michael?
Well, I'm a compiler guy. For us, a disk is just another level in the memory hierarchy. I really have nothing more to add.
There are, of course, many topics of interest around HPC, and we could spend a long time on a lot of them, but let's get your brief thoughts on one or two more here in our speed round. Peter, tell me about Windows. How relevant is it for HPC?
I think it's very relevant in terms of the missing middle. There's a huge number of people out there in small companies that are using Windows workstations. Go back to South Africa. They're supporting both Windows and Linux, of course, on their systems. They had a small production company, needed to render things. They were using Windows-based software, produced Africa's first digital full-length movie. What happens in the future? I think it depends what happens with cloud. I think it very much depends upon what Microsoft does with Azure. But at the moment, where you've got fat clients running Windows, reaching out to a Windows-based cluster, using the exact same skills to get HPC-type capabilities, will address that middle range.
Michael, I'm not letting you punt on this one. You're a compiler guy. You better have an opinion on Windows and HPC. Go.
It's not Windows, it's Microsoft. Microsoft will have an impact on HPC because they have the clout to bring people together and make them work together. And no one else in this industry, except for maybe Intel and IBM, is going to have that kind of clout. So Microsoft will make things happen because they have the technology, and they have the money, and they have the will.
Vendors are both for it. Let's hit the user side, Windows and HPC.
Well, I think Microsoft's got a lot of opportunity in this area. It's not clear to me they have opportunity to unseat Linux in environments that have Linux clusters already. But so many environments that haven't moved into HPC yet, the so-called missing middle, are Windows-based environments, as Peter was saying. So tremendous opportunity there. And say what you will about Microsoft. When you need to install a Microsoft package, you hit that install button and it goes. They have the professional software engineering expertise to make it easier to set up clusters and easier to manage them. And then you've got the opportunity for users to move straight from their Windows laptop or desktop onto the cluster. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity there. I'm not sure it's so much in the supercomputing centers that are already moved to Linux, but there's a vast amount of territory there for Microsoft to grow HPC usage.
Thomas.
They can play a dominant role if they get their strategy right. In the non-science workloads for financial markets and scalable commercial, I think that they will dominate, and I think they have a good path going forward. However, they need to figure out HPC from the science and technology point of view, and I don't think they understand that community and the needs of that community as yet.
Nevertheless, we've been seeing it growing as a market share in our surveys pretty regularly. How about another topic of interest, cloud computing? How does it pertain to supercomputing?
Well, we're looking at it, of course, as a way for our users to get ramped up more easily. I mean, cloud computing means different things to different people, in particular if you're on the provider side versus the user side. It certainly has some interesting characteristics as it's usually implemented from the users, which is rapid access to it and not worrying so much about allocations, just paying as you go or using as you go in the case of a non-profit center like ours. So we're certainly interested in the technology, and we think it actually has a lot of potential, in particular for the, again, for the science and engineering communities that have not really moved into the cluster space yet. In particular, some of our computational life sciences users have requested this. They don't want to become large-scale parallel computing experts. They really want a simple interface, hosted services, software as a service to run their life sciences applications, and it has a really good opportunity in that growing space.
Peter, cloud is central to adaptive computing. Your thoughts?
I think it's definitely going to be something that takes over, but it's not about VMs, certainly not today in HPC.
Takes over is kind of a strong verb there.
Yes, it is. Well, part of the way you can look at it is many HPC facilities are already clouds in almost everything but name.
Right.
They've got all the agility, they've got the automation, they've got all the flexibility. The only thing that's really missing is that abstraction that makes it simpler and you don't see through to the real systems. Now, once again, you talk about the missing middle, I think it's a great enabler. The other thing is the agility. If you're looking to support a whole new batch of users, you can stand up a facility as long as they're HPC class systems rapidly in the cloud rather than getting a new facility buying systems. That takes too long. Even if you do it as a temporary fill-up, you can empower your users, you can do it fast, and I think that's another huge advantage.
Michael, you watch people develop applications. Your thoughts on cloud computing and HPC?
For capacity type computing, I think the cloud is appropriate. For capability computing, I don't think it addresses that, and so I don't think the HPC centers are going away. Speaking as a vendor, providing services in the cloud is a challenge that we haven't solved yet.
Thomas.
If they get the economics right, they will be able to offload much of the HPC workload and enhance the overall workflow for high-performance computing. However, the hype is out of control. Cloud in Iraq, give me a break. They are confronted by significant problems of security, of long-distance bandwidth, of incompatibilities, protocols which are shared ubiquitously, and pricing. Pricing is not right yet. So we're dealing with another fad which I think has substance, but we need to get real about it.
I'd like to make a comment there if I could, because it depends how you define cloud. And if you have private cloud, if you own the facility but you're using the methodology, a lot of those problems of security, even the bandwidth, all of those things can go away. And if you're operating at a large scale, it's often cheaper to do it yourself than it is to go for a public service. So it really is all about the definition of cloud, I think. There's capability there, and it's not always going to somebody else's facility or a pay-for-play service.
So many of the same arguments we heard around grid, pro and con. It really is a rerun on a lot of these same topics.